if you're a particular shade, yeah, it's okay, you're all right. But if you're darker than that shade, it's no, you've got no chance, not here. You're gonna have to work a little bit harder because a little bit about you is not right. Well, actually, it's my skin tone. Just let me know.
Do you remember the singer Estelle said that? She
yeah,
said
absolutely.
Do you remember? And that was years ago.
And it still exists to this very day.
I think as a mum, my daughter's 12, turning 13, and she's at that impressionable age where, you know, she's at just started secondary school. Everyone wants to look perfect, everyone wants to look like what they see on socials. And so I'm really conscious about how I portray myself to her as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, even with my hair, I wear wigs. I wear weave, I have my natural hair out, I wear braids, and I encourage her to experiment with her hair as well, but to also love her hair, love her afro, because she'll go online, and especially being a black girl as well, there's going to be so many different avenues and so many different ways people are telling her not to love herself, whether it's directly or indirectly.
I saw Lukwesa Burak showing her natural hair in a bulletin on BBC News. And the acceptance of that was really groundbreaking, but also quite sad that we got to this year before a news anchor felt capable of doing that.
I just don't think any woman should be judged by how she wears her hair. It's nobody's business.
Yeah.
It's
But
really
you say that, but they have been.
They have, and I find on social media as well, the way they want to cuss black women is like, oh, all you do is spend your money on wigs.
Without actually understanding as well for a lot of people why they wear wigs. Like, I know I wear wigs more in the winter because I want to protect my hair. The cold weather, the harsh winds, etc. do break my hair. So sometimes I just wear wigs for that easiness, but also if I want to go gym or whatever, it's just quick and easy for me to fling a wig on, you know. But I do think that we are seeing more and more representation, natural representation in the media from black presenters, from news presenters. You know, when you look at Charlene, she has her hair in braids at the moment, and that's how she's been rocking her hair in knotless braids on the news. The same with the BBC presenter. And I think the more that we see that, the more it will become acceptable. But what I don't want to then see is then people appropriating that. I get some people will want to appreciate the different hairstyles and culture that comes with different black hairstyles, but I just don't want to see it being appropriated.
It already is though.
But where do we draw the line though? Like, I do think it's a thin line between appropriation and appreciation. You know, I saw an article the other day and they were saying Kim Kardashian brought back, I think was it the side part or something like that. And everyone was like, the side part never went anywhere. Like, you can't bring something back that never went anywhere.
I can tell you.
I was just going to mention my side part when I lost it.
Guys, we slightly went just ever so slightly onto another subject, but I do just want to very quickly touch back on the carnival if I can. There's a lot of talk about moving it to Hyde Park because, in the words of the police, it can be more contained there. Where do you stand on that?
Listen to the language already.
Contained. That's a form of oppression, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. By the way, you know, this weekend there's been a Leeds festival, there's been a Reading festival, and there's been the carnival. The most news articles have been about the Notting Hill Carnival, but yet certain situations happened in both those other festivals. They were highlighted for a day, and they're now old news. Whilst the Notting Hill Carnival, I saw just today, because I've been away from the news recently, but just saw about 8 separate articles, and only one of them was positive. One of them was about people enjoying themselves and that community aspect that you spoke about. Whereas the other 7 were all highlighted with negative, the rubbish that's left on the floor. Well, I'm quite sure if they took a picture of the Leeds and the Reading festivals, they would have been the same. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the way that this portrayed, and then when you hear that the police say it will be contained, well then it's not the Notting Hill Carnival, is it? You're creating a whole new carnival for people that actually would want to be at Hyde Park, whereas most of the people, as far as I'm concerned, are people that the tradition of the Notting Hill Carnival will be lost.
Like what's scary to me is the way that Notting Hill Carnival is policed, and I think that needs to be looked at and changed, and the way that this proposal is, I feel like I've heard this before. I feel like they say this every year.
Saying it for donkeys.
Well,
Yes,
exactly.
so what they're doing is there's always an agenda, right?
Yeah.
So the way that they contained people at the end of Carnival on Monday was to further fuel the argument and justification for moving it to Hyde Park. So, for example, when obviously I think the Carnival finishes around 7 p.m, from around 5, they started closing off side roads. So that's where you saw the videos on social media of people literally like crammed in, can't move anywhere, and feeling like they were being crushed, etc. That came from the police closing side roads and saying, oh, they're creating a flow system of a one-way flow. No, what you were doing was containing people dangerously in an area, which then gets people irated, irritated, tempers start to flare, emotions start to run high, people start doing wild things like jumping over barriers and jumping into over the fences.
I've been in that situation. Maybe about 4 years ago, this exact thing happened at the end of Carnival. I was there with my mates and we got funneled again. And I was like, what on earth is happening? Why are they, this is dangerous. And I thought there must be some problem at the end. This can't be an intended thing that they're doing this
crowd
to people.
management.
Because we couldn't get back that way because everyone was surging trying to go this way, but they'd closed off the road, but nobody at the back knew that, so everyone's pushing forward. And we were terrified, and luckily I'm quite tall, I could keep my head above the crowd. I was with some friends who were this high, they were panicking. We had to drag each other to the side, I had to boost my friends over this high wall. When we jumped down the other side, I remember I was shaking. We literally left at that point because I was like, I can't do this again. And I didn't go back to Carnival for a few years because of that exact experience. And I think it's completely mad that they put people
of their
through
whole
that.
agenda, so that they can say, well, actually, there was all this crushing and this, that, and the other, so this is why we need to move it to Hyde Park. Well, no, what you need to do is have a better crowd management plan and system, and open up the side roads. We're not revelers and people enjoying Carnival are not there to be contained. Do you know what I mean? We're not animals, we're not in a zoo. Although that's maybe how they might see some people who go to Carnival.
That word contains
not,
really
it's
triggered.
It's a very loaded, isn't it? A loaded word.
Exactly.
Also, it takes away, it wouldn't be Notting Hill anymore, it'll take away the historical legacy. What are they going to call it? Hyde Park.
Although I did see someone.
Then they'll be talking about changing the music as well, with the Hyde Park culture.
It would not be the same, and the contained.
Yeah, I saw someone tweet today and they were like, they should just move Carnival to the A406. And you know what? Guys, it makes sense. Think about it. It makes sense. You know how long the A406 is? Imagine the Carnival floats going up and down there. It actually, think about it. It makes sense.
Somebody actually tweeted that.
No, they did. They were like, move it to the A406. And I was like, and then I sat and thought about it. And I thought, the A406 is actually quite long. If you close both sides of it, right, you could get quite a few floats and stuff down there, honestly.
Let me take you guys on to the second question, because we had the big speech from Emily Maitlis. And she called out the issues that she had with her former employers, the BBC. And the question's simple: how easy is it to speak truth to power when that power is your employer?
I can answer that. It's not easy. I always say it's because you need that financial stability, isn't it? The only people that can really talk like that are people who are in a situation where they don't need that money.
I disagree somewhat. I understand what you're saying fully. I think it depends on the kind of person you are, the kind of conversation you're holding. It is massively difficult, and I don't see it for everybody. because of that financial situation as well, and maybe probably feeling that they're not at a level to be able to talk in that way. But I've never, listen, I've never seen that or shown that in my field, because for me, the truth is the thing that always hurts, and the truth is the thing that people ask me to hold others to account for. And I would never renegade on that, because then who speaks for those who don't have the kind of voice or the power
And
or
that's
the
quite key,
influence?
isn't it? Because we're in a period now where truth is probably your most valuable commodity, because of the way that the world has changed. Isn't there something to be said for being able to speak that truth?
But can I add something? Have you noticed her former employees? Why didn't she speak out while she was working for them?
I think it's
It's
very
very
telling.
easy.
It's very
Yeah,
telling.
It's very easy to slap off your former
Yeah.
employers. I think there would have been more strength if she'd said it while she was working there.
I think it depends on the industry that you work in, and also the type of work that you're doing. If I think about one of my very close friends, Melissa, she's left NHS Blood and Donation Service, and what she experienced within there was absolutely shocking, and she wanted to talk about it from when she worked there, but she wasn't able to for various reasons, but also because the trauma of what she'd actually experienced was too much for her to talk about it at that time. And it's now, I think, around 2 years later or 18 months later since she's left, and she's had therapy and she's been able to speak about it and speak about it to the media. And what's now happening is I've seen so many people come out on social media saying, actually, you can take off blood and donation service and just leave NHS, and lots of us will have similar stories to tell of our experiences within the NHS. So I think there's different reasons why some people can't speak their truth or why they won't speak their truth. I think if I look at my own career, there's been many times that I've wanted to speak my truth in my career, about my experiences in the industries that the industry I was working in, but I didn't feel that I had the power to do that because I was bottom rung of the ladder. As soon as I got to like mid-management and senior management level, I was like, hang on a minute, I'm seeing people come in that look like me, that are going through the exact same thing that I'm going through. I need to say something, because if I don't, the same cycle is going to continue and continue and continue. And I was like, what's the worst that they can do to me? Sack me, go on then. And then that's another issue within itself, which I've got a big mouth, I will talk on that as well,
That is the power of experience, of being somewhere, and it's something that I've found in the last however long I've been doing journalism, probably like 8 years or so, in that you do build on your ability to speak your truth, to speak out about things as you go through your career. And I very much remember being on the bottom rung and being in those meetings and having to suck it up and just take it and take it and take it, and people get beaten down by that, and that's why we hemorrhage black talent from these organisations, because it's exhausting, and every single day you have to come in, you have to be the one who's willing to risk your position, who's willing to shake the tables, and to be the one who's speaking up, and not everybody is cut out to do that, and not everybody should have to do that. That shouldn't be your job. You're coming in to be paid to do a job. You shouldn't have to take on this additional burden, all these extra things you have to do just because you happen to be the only black woman in that space. And I think ultimately it comes down to, like you say, having people in those more senior positions who you can look to, and that will empower you to be able to speak out at an earlier time. But that all too often doesn't happen. We don't have those people in those senior roles who we can look up to, who we can approach, who we can go to after the meeting and be like, they said this, that was dodgy. What did you think about that? Exactly. And when you find that person, you cling to them. And the way you use those people within your position to empower you to speak out, that's invaluable. And until we get more people moving up through the ranks, I don't see how it's going to get any different other than you get beaten down and then you leave, because it's you can't see a way through. And
can I add, as also there's that trope, isn't it, of the angry black woman? So if you even what challenge isn't even the right word. Even if you question something, some people get very defensive and beat you down with that trope.
I think as well, it doesn't. If I use sports as an example, because that's where most of my career I worked in. Troy can tell you, it's an industry, in the industry that I was in, it's an industry where the ones at the top are white, middle-aged men, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're a black woman or a woman, they don't want to see you excelling within that industry. So the moment that you start speaking out about something, or you start addressing something, or saying, hang on, like, that's not right, it's then a whole industry that is governed and run historically by white middle-aged men who play golf together, who sit in exec box together, who sit on different boards together, who is going to say, did you hear what Lorraine was saying? Yeah. And now you're ostracized, not just in your own workplace, but anywhere that is linked to anyone, anywhere with that, in that industry. And I do think times are changing, it's within sports, slowly, but there's been many a time that, like, I've called Troy and I'm like, you know, but
so much I can tell you off camera.
Speak your
Lorraine, because I don't embarrass anyone.
The only thing is,
You know who I'm going to talk about, isn't it?
I'm not even sure that times are changing. I think there was a moment where the door was open for change, and you had to get everything in because the door very quickly closes. There's always, in my sport, there's always these significant moments where you think that change is happening, and then it goes back to type. So for me, I think we're back to type now.
Factory, I call it, you're back to factory settings, and and that's what's happened with the BLM George Floyd thing. You had all these companies giving this big chat, we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
Yeah, but
if you go back to them now, 2 years later, there's no change, or there might be one black person up there that's holding the fort for everyone.
But also, I don't see why it should have to be a black person at the I feel we should all have the same opportunities, right? In an ideal world. It should also be that people who may not necessarily be black but come from working class backgrounds, or, you know, different backgrounds, whether it's they came here as refugees or whatever, they should all have the same experience, same opportunities to succeed and elevate. Sometimes I find that even when you do have, say, a black person at the top, not all skin folk are kinfolk. So having someone there, it does not matter. What we need is people who are from diverse backgrounds who can actually advocate for people who come from similar backgrounds to them. So whether it's a working class background, whether it's a Jewish background, whether it's someone who came here as a refugee, whether it's someone who dropped out of school and didn't get an education, whether it's someone who talks like they're literally from South London or East London. Do you know what I mean? Just people that come from diverse backgrounds. It doesn't necessarily always have to be a black person at the top, because I'll tell you something, not all skin folk are kinfolk, and also you get some people who get to the top and they're like, right, bam, dash down that ladder, close that door.
Drop the ladder.
You lot are right down there, yeah? Good, great.
And then they gaslight you because they're up there. They can use that in a position to gaslight you.
So I think we just need to see change across the board in an ideal world. I know it's not going to, like, for most industries, for many industries, it's not going to change overnight or in a couple of years. But sooner or later, people are just going to start booting down the door and saying, well, guess what? I'm getting to the top whether you like it or not.
We've been saying overnight for a really long time. I'm fed up of
No, of
overnight now. The
course,
sleeping bag I've got, actually, honestly,
full of holes.
Right, you know what I mean? And I've tried to mend it and change it. This overnight thing, and I understand what you're saying. But it's not overnight, is it? I've been in this industry now since the day I could actually get real proper employment, from when I came out of the game and struggled a little bit. In sport. And I struggled a bit. And I'm still thinking 30 whatever years on, overnight still. We're talking overnight. I always say that the snail got turned around and gone back. Because that snail got to the end of its goal and felt, boy, that's not for me, let me go back now. Imagine how long that was.
Troy, do you not think in a sports industry perspective, in terms of, like, if we think about from broadcast media perspective, right? The reason why I say I feel like it's changing is because I've got massive respect for the young G's coming up.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're all like, you lot don't need to give us a seat at the table because we're creating our own table. And they're creating their own table. And now what you see happening is you see footballers and players and whatever giving interviews to these own tables that have been created, and less giving interviews to mainstream media. And it's mainstream media now that are having to listen to podcasts, to YouTube channels, to this and that from the young G's to get quotes, because they're saying, well, actually, we're going to create our own table and we're going to create our own content because you lot didn't want to give us a seat at the table.
Exactly,
And so it's in that regard why I say I think things are slowly changing in terms of a business model. And when we look at kind of clubs,
Is that exclusive to sport?
no, I don't think it is, because when you look at entertainment, for example, and music, it's the same thing. People are creating their own platforms, their own YouTube.
The late great Jamal Edwards created his own platform, didn't he?
They're creating their own YouTube channels, their own podcasts, and I think as much as we hate this kind of living in the moment and everything going on social media, actually social media has enabled a lot of these young people and older people to create their own platforms and to create content and show the bigger powers that be, F you, we don't need you, we'll do this by ourselves. And they're now coming to them because they want access to their content and their footage.
Do you know who was quite a groundbreaker when they done that? Was Harry and Meghan. When they sent out that press release, they said they're not dealing with the mainstream media. They're going to go to the grassroots. People are like outraged.
I mean, that is just, I think, one example of showing that there is a different way to do things. We don't have to be funneled into these same channels of communication and the same ways of getting our messages out there and having these conversations. You know, for example, this what we're doing right now.
I was going to say,
exactly. And I think, you know, to bring it back to journalism and related to, you know, Emily Maitlis and what you were saying, Carina, about the need for a broad stroke of diversity and diverse experiences within those echelons of power, within those systems, I think that is the crucial thing. Because even when, like you say, you get people in there who may look like you, that doesn't mean they represent the communities.
We're not monoliths.
Exactly. And that's so crucially important, particularly in news, in broadcast, in print, whatever it is. These newsrooms have a responsibility to properly represent the communities that they're reporting about, that they're talking about. That's where you get these nonsense articles about Notting Hill and you know, mixing up people's names because you can't recognise one black person out of
exactly.
And all of that, all of these natural biases and prejudices that just slip through every day in the print and are consumed by people. That is what happens when you don't have anybody who understands a wider community within those newsrooms. They're deciding what goes on the 10 o'clock news. They're deciding what's front page news. So if we don't get a change in who's making those decisions, these narratives are going to keep going every single year, every single decade.
And you know, that's why I always call it controlling the narrative. We never control our own conversation. And that's why I get actually what you've just said there, because we are starting to. And I've always spoken about the empowerment over lockdown of our young people, our creatives, and how they've gone, we actually don't need your platforms, because here we go, we've got one little camera, a bit of light, and we're going to run, you know. And they've created such a space where, you know, I sit back, and obviously Darren, we've had a number of those young people on our platforms, and I sit back and I just nod and I go, yeah, do your thing, you know. But then I always revert back, and if I'm wrong, just let me know. I always revert back to the BBC, to Sky, to ITV, and I always think, because that's your 1, 2, 3, 4. I always think, but where are they? What's being said now? Why as our creatives are not good enough to be a host or a panelist? Do you know? And if you are, you have to be a particular kind of black to be a host or a panelist.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I look at it and I just think to myself, that's where probably I was going, Carina. But you're perfectly right to mention it in your way. You know, if you're a particular shade, it's okay, you're all right. But if you're darker than that shade, it's no, you've got no chance, not here. You're gonna have to work a little bit harder, because a little bit about you is not right. Well, actually, it's my skin tone. Just let me know.
Do you remember the singer Estelle said that? She
said
Do
absolutely.
you remember? And that was years ago.
And it still exists to this very day.
Yeah.
Still exists.
Ruby, are younger people making their own, the younger people you know, are they intent on creating their own platforms?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, especially when you have no resources as well, or no money to buy equipment or do amazing things like podcasts, music video, anything. That if you don't like something that's in the mainstream, then you do just do it yourself. You get a team together, you know, and it's also about motivation and having role models, because me and my friends so many times were like, let's start a magazine, let's do this, let's do that. And then it just falls off because one of us hasn't replied or something like that. You know, that's, yeah. So that's hard, you know, and what Carina said about closing that door, you need to leave it open for people, you know. And me as like a white woman, a young white woman, I didn't have the same experiences as you guys. All of our experiences are completely different, but I still get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so frustrating working in the media when there are people above you, because you want to scream and you want to be like, this is what it should be. It shouldn't be like this.
Yes.
And what Troy was saying about, I do think some things are controlled, definitely. They pick who they want on a show, they pick who they want on a list.
100%.
When her job, like you said, you know, sometimes you don't speak out because you need that financial income, but also sometimes people don't speak out because it serves a purpose for them to keep quiet in that instance. Now it doesn't serve a purpose for her to keep quiet. She's not at the BBC anymore. Right. Now it serves more of a purpose for her to speak out about it, because there is this whole conversation going on about how impartial is the BBC, and you know, talking about people that sit on the board that have links to the Tory party, etc., etc. So now she's left actually, now it serves another purpose, a different purpose for her to talk out about it. So yeah, you can have solidarity with her, then you can also understand that actually there's an ulterior motive for her speaking about it.
And as you were saying, it's about risking your space.
Well, exactly. And I think that takes a huge amount of bravery. And I think so often it is the people who are the most marginalised in those spaces who are the ones who are taking those risks on a daily basis. They're the ones who won't wait until they've left, who'll come out, and that, like you said, Carina, protecting people younger than you who are coming through. That's every time I've ever had to call someone out or go into a meeting, and that's always been my motivation, is making it better for the next trainees or the junior people coming in. And where are the senior white women then? Like, where are they? They're often, like, you know, conspicuously silent in those moments when we need them the most. So I do have solidarity for what she's saying. I'm glad it's been said. I think it needed to be said, and I think there's a really important conversation going on now about objectivity versus kind of you know, truth within news and balance, and how you get those right. And I think that's a great thing for all broadcasters and journalists to be thinking about, and uncovering some of the kind of corruption essentially that's been going on. But yeah, at the same time, I think there's a level of skepticism there about, like you say, her, you know, capitalising on the moment when it suits her.
Look at the language. So could we add risk to contain as the
Yeah.
language? Do you know what I mean? As the language that's being used. I want to add corrupt to it as well, but I want to put that
But move that to
because I've been told off for that before. So
Do we always need balance? It's a very general question.
there's always gonna be balance.
Do we always need balance?
No.
Of course not.
No.
No, because if
There are some issues that do not require balance, like balance is false. And there's this false equivalency between balance and objectivity, because it's like, well, you don't... So, for example, climate change, say if 97% of scientists believe that climate change is real, and 3% believe that it's not. Balance, according to mainstream media, would be to get one person to represent the 97%, to debate one person who represents the 3%.
Yeah.
But that's not objective.
No.
That's not, and then there's often that's not explained. They don't tell you, by the way, 97% agree with this guy. They just say, here's an argument between two people. They're both valid. What do we think? And that's not how it should happen. So I think there are plenty of balance needs to be approached differently on lots of topics.
And it depends what the subject is.
Exactly, exactly.
What do you mean?
context.
What do you mean by that?
If you're talking about racism, how can you balance that? You're either racist or you're not, isn't it?
That shut the room down. Because there'll be many that then say, but when you put like context, and they'll give an excuse for language or terminology,
Well,
or
do you know what? Like
this
I said,
role's
it's one
been
or the
given to
other. There
that.
is no in between.
I'm with you, by the way. Like, you ain't getting no argument.
I just saw the way Carina looked at me.
We've not got even time to be arguing about is something racist or if it's not. I'm not arguing with no one. what I say is racist. It's racist. Me as a black woman, my opinion holds ground.
Well, you've
I'm
seen
not
on
arguing
Twitter,
with
you
anyone.
always have
No.
people flying into your mentions to tell you what is racist and what
Yeah.
not is
Oh,
racist.
yeah, like what's racist, what should offend you, what shouldn't offend you, all of this stuff. But do you know what? Before I used to like reply to them, I don't have the energy. I just block them.
It
on
depends on
my-
who's on it.
Do we always need balance? It's a
You know
very
what?
general,
No, I
very
don't think
open
we
question.
don't. We don't always need balance
Yeah.
at all. I personally think we don't always need balance. It's like when people say to me, you know, sometimes just take the high road. No, sometimes I'm going to go low. I am. Sometimes I'm going to go low, and I'm going to kick you where it hurts. That is balance.
This is why we get on so well.
Yeah, that is balance. So no, we don't always need balance. Sometimes we
Generally
do.
means
but-
kick as well, you know that, so let's not hold back on that.
But you kind of know the MO and you know the person that's going to come for you, and I'm always like ready for them. And usually they end up blocking me. And then when they block me, I put the screen grab so everyone can see that they blocked me.
But yeah, no, my short answer is no, we don't always need balance.
Ruby, do you want to come in on this? Or should we
Yeah,
move on?
also, no, like the subject matter as well. It's just. It makes, like, say the subject of racism, sometimes when they have one person who is for and against, they make the person who is obviously against racism look stupid.
Yeah.
You
Why
see
are we
it
having
so
a for
many
and
times.
against? on
Yeah.
this? Like,
Because it's
why?
balance.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like when you look at clips on Twitter of like, I don't know, Good Morning Britain and stuff, and I'm just like, I just
They
don't
need
know.
to sort out who
I
they
just-
invite on that show.
Yeah.
But they're not going to, are they? That's the thing. They're going to invite what they want the controversy. They want the conversation to ignite. So when they put the 90-second of the clip up, it's going to add to their viewership.
Is
And
that a
it'll
general
go-
thing for
I think
media
so.
across
I
the
think
board?
it's a general
Sometimes
thing.
I'm like,
They do things and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, for example, I saw when we had that tragic killing of the 9-year-old in Liverpool last week, and I watched a talk show. Can I mention the name? Don't want to get anyone into trouble, but yeah, watched a
I
talk
think
show.
I know what you're
And
talking about.
they were talking about it was something, I can't remember the strapline, but it was like is Britain like out of control or whatever it was with violence, and they had 3 black people on discussing the killings in Liverpool when the young girl that was killed was not black. The people who they suspect to perpetuate that murder were not black. Liverpool have their own problem with gangs, right? Long-standing,
It's white gangs.
Yeah.
long-standing issue with gangs in Liverpool. They're not black, right? So indirectly, what you have done is you're discussing an issue in the north of England that has nothing to do with black people. But what you've then done is invited a panel of 3 black people. I know we've been screaming for diversity, guys, but in this instance, I would have been fine not seeing the diversity, right? So they've invited 3 panelists, black panelists on to discuss this issue around Liverpool. And automatically, viewers and the specific viewers that show has, automatically and subconsciously is now associating the killing of a 9-year-old with the black community when it's got nothing to do with us.
And for me-
And they'll tell you that's balance because you've been asking for diversity on panels and whatever. And that is an instance we didn't need balance. We didn't need to be on there.
Should those individuals have accepted the invitation?
I was just going to say that.
Me
Because
pers-
I have been
I
invited to
wouldn't
talk about
have.
subjects and I've said no.
I personally wouldn't have, but then also with some people, and I'm not saying this is the case with those people because 2 of them I know quite well, but with some people, they do go on these platforms for their own personal gain, right? It's got nothing to do with wanting to have the best interests of the community at heart, whichever community it is that you're talking about. It's all to do with fulfilling their own personal agenda, getting their face out there, making a career out of, issues that are happening in the black community when they don't actually really care about it. I'm not saying this is the case in that, but me personally, I would have said, no, I'm not coming on. Why would you want me, and me as a Londoner as well, to come on to talk about something that's in Liverpool?
Why couldn't they get 3 white people from Liverpool?
Yeah, I was gonna
that
say
would have been
Liverpool.
that would have been the proper thing to do.
I think,
isn't it?
they knew in that instant what they were doing. So we can talk about GMB and what they were doing and whatever, and they do. But all of these media outlets know what they're doing when they invite guests on and when there's a certain topic being discussed. And it just really riled me up that you've got an issue in the north of England that is amongst white gangs, but you have 3 people from London, 3 black people from London talking about that issue.
Goes back to what you were saying about people making decisions who can look at the bigger picture and actually understand the impact of a particular type of framing of any given situation.
Well, exactly. And I think in terms of the way that these debates are framed, talking about objectivity and balance, and the way that, you know, we'll have all had these invitations to come onto certain platforms to talk about the black issue of the day or the racism issue of the day, and you know, and it can be hard to decipher what is a good opportunity, what is a useful way to spend your time as a journalist, as someone who's worked in this area, who maybe has something positive to add to the conversation that would help, when you know that it might get twisted, it might get thrown back in your face. Are you being used for a soundbite, for a clip to get their views? And I think it comes down to being a bit more selective about the conversations you take part in. You know, not giving too much of our conversations and our narratives away
into that space.
Into those spaces, exactly, where, like you said, Troy, we don't have control over the narrative. And I think there are ways that you can mitigate for yourself when you are invited onto these things, in terms of you can have really in-depth chats with the producer, you can ask how it's going to be framed, you can set, you know, boundaries for yourself and be like, who am I going to be on with? How are you pitching this? What is the conversation? And really, you know, advocate for yourself. But not everyone can do that, and I think producers know that, and that's why people get into tricky situations.
They get excited that they're
It's
invited.
easy to get, like, swept under
Particularly
it.
when you're younger, and I remember when I first started out, I thought, I should say yes to everything and go on radio, and I wrote this article and they want to talk about it, cool, let's go chat. And then you very quickly realise that, they're trapping me, it's a trap.
Whose gain is it?
Because that is broadening now as well, isn't it? Where they're broadening their reach now. So anyone that's speaking on social, let's grab them.
Oh God.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're great on social,
Yeah.
but when it comes to then speaking in the real world, almost, because social is not the real world, they then struggle, and that's when they get caught, and that's when they get trapped, and that's when they decide, you know, that's not the way I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
We've all been utilised in that way somewhere along the line. You know, I learned a really harsh lesson after coming off the phone to Darren one time, where he rolled me up, he got me angry, and the next call was from a journalist, and my anger just boom through to the journalist, who wrote every single word that I said. Okay, but the headline, it's his fault, and he knows it's his fault, but the headline got me into trouble. So the headline, you know, I was threatened with being sued and X, Y, and Z and whatever else.
Was that by Darren?
No, I was going to sue him. But actually, if you read the content of the piece, although I was angry, you'll understand what I'm saying. And it was around the lack of representation about black managers. Not the situation that had happened. Wasn't calling the club who threatened me racist. But even down to the other day, this 3-4 years ago, I still get people saying, remember when Troy Townsend said?
Their memory's very long.
Very
Extremely long.
Very long.
What's so hard in that situation, Troy, saying there, is the emotion that's inevitably involved, which isn't the case for the white antagonist who's been brought on to debate you. You're being asked to explain your existence and, you know, give examples of times when racism happened. Does it exist? Tell me why. Prove to me that this is your experience.
Exactly.
And that's emotional, and that's really difficult, and that's not the same for everybody else who's on the panel who doesn't have those lived experiences.
But do you know the lesson I learned as well was not only to curb those emotions at times, Troy, which actually should we, but also the fact that I wasn't supported internally as well.
Yeah.
So I was thrown out. That's what he said. It's not what we said.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
But
So
does that go back to what Nat was saying about being very selective about what you choose to say?
From that moment on,
ramifications?
one, I made sure that after every incident I didn't speak to you, so that you didn't get me held up. But no, it was the fact that we became very selective about, I can't name them, but I'm not doing certain channels anymore. You've got no chance. They'll ring, and they've apologised for the past, but you'll still be there to set me up, and I'm not having it anymore. And if that means that I do one interview rather than 10, I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
I'm all right
One
with that.
good interview is
One
better than
is
10
better than
terrible
10.
ones.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've got a friend that was invited onto a national TV, and he asked the questions, you know, what are you going to be asking me?
Yeah.
And it all seemed okay. And then when he went live on TV, complete different set of answers, questions. So he does not do it anymore.
Oh, wow.
He got proper stitched up.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't, sorry Dan, and that's why I don't ask. I don't ask because you're never going to stick to it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with how I'll respond, but you're not going to stick to that. Do you know what I mean? They're going to ask us, yeah, we can ask you about this or no, because on the back of my answers, you might stay somewhere else. You know?
I'm going to ask this one to Ruby. Owami Davies, thank God she's been found safe and well. But what did we learn about the search?
There's so many questions that haven't been answered still, and I feel like there needs to be a proper investigation. When Melissa did her space as well.
Melissa Segoda from the Daily Mirror.
Yeah, when she did her space, I remember her calling me, like, she had the idea for it. She was like, should I do it? Because no one is talking about it in the mainstream. And I was like, yes, you should do it. And then she did it, and the amount of people who came in was just amazing. It was her first space. She was really nervous. Yes, I listened to it. She was really nervous. But then...
So she was the first one to alert people to this missing girl.
Well, I guess as a journalist, on making something such as a space, yes.
On Twitter.
Yeah. And then she was, after that happened, all these mainstream outlets started, they wanted her to speak, which she was a bit apprehensive at first. She was just, and I just said the goal, is to bring Owami's face and name to the spotlight, because we've all seen how she has been treated differently.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, some stuff might have to be off record now. But
I'm not afraid to say that when Owami Davies
Take up the baton.
went missing, I was actually working that shift, and I thought, right, we're going to put this online.
yeah,
Can I just say, when was that?
31st of July, I think.
yeah,
Because we as in my podcast group, got a DM from someone in Essex, a white lady, I think she might have been a head teacher in Essex, in July at some point, saying, very concerned, this girl has gone missing, because remember it was only being reported in local press.
That's right.
So Essex Live, I think it was, it reported it. She said, she shared the link, and she said, very concerned that this seems to be happening on a regular basis, and there's no widespread coverage about it, especially as she's meant to be, they think that she may be in London. So we clicked on the link, saw the article, and did a quick search. Before we talk about anything publicly, we want to fact check. Couldn't find anything about it, right? Other than the Essex Live article. There was no further update, anything like that. And we're not journalists, right? We're just a group of mums. So we thought maybe she's been found, cool, whatever, left it. And then in comes the Daily Mirror.
That was I saw that and I thought, right, we got to get that online. And I was thinking,
And it was
why
wild because
have police taken 3 weeks? 3 weeks. I don't like to make comparisons, but when Sarah Everard went missing, we knew within 3 days.
yeah.
So and then when Melissa
You
came
get
into
quite
work,
emotional when you talk about this, don't you?
because it's upsetting. Because I know if I was to go missing, I'm not going to get the publicity that a white woman's going to get. They'll probably say, they usually say, they think, oh, she's gone off, she's drinking, she's doing... Because remember, the police put out a narrative that Owami was drinking. Yeah, they said that she was suffering from depression and she may be drinking alcohol as self-medication. Why would you put that out there?
Well, the police deny that there was anything untoward about their approach to the search, and that there was any suggestion that she was treated differently because of her race.
They're not going to admit it, are they?
Yeah.
What do we think of the fact that the wrong image of Owami was used.
Because all
in
black
this,
people
We all
look the same.
We're
We all look the same.
We're not
We all look the
surprised.
same.
See, there's sarcasm
Lorraine
in
and I
what
both
looks
we've
like.
got
embrace.
rating, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you, someone will be like, "Oh, you're right, Carina," like, because we all look the same.
If I go missing, they'll put Karina's picture out.
And for me, it's just like it absolutely, and apologise for swearing, it pisses me off because as the mother of a 12-year-old child, right, and a girl at that, a dark-skinned black girl, right, I have a little bit more of a privilege than my daughter does because I'm a bit more fairer skinned than she is. She's a dark-skinned black girl.
So I was alluding
Get back
to
to that.
And it me off that she could go missing and actually her life is going to be less important because she's black, she's dark skinned, and she's a girl, right? So my thing now is, as a mum, I'm going to protect her anyway, or do my best to protect her. But if she was to go missing, if my goddaughter was to go missing, if any of my friends' kids that are girls were to go missing, I have to contend with the fact that if I wasn't the person that I was, and I was just an average, everyday person who didn't know the police procedures, who didn't know how to navigate the Met Police, who didn't know how to navigate certain institutions, my child may never come home, or my friends' kids or family members or whatever may never come home because they're not going to put as much effort into looking for her because she's not a blonde hair, blue-eyed child, right? And that really me off. And it's as much as they want to say, oh well, we didn't treat her any differently because she was a black woman. Yes, you did. Let's just go back and look at how serving Met police officers circulated pictures of the two sisters that were found in North London, I think it was, in the park. Pictures of their body.
I had mutual friends with one of them, so that was just...
Right. Mocking them, right? There's a long list of things that I can go through.
And do you know what? When those girls
Thank
went
you.
missing, I only knew they went missing because we got mutual friends and I live in the area, so I knew they'd gone missing. Police did not put out any lines. Two sisters have gone missing. Why didn't we know about this?
I get that the Met are massively understaffed and there is crime that happens every day across London. Like, I 100% get that. You can't, especially when you start looking at sometimes when kids are reported as missing, sometimes actually they're just missing from care, like they haven't come home to their foster home like in time or whatever it might be, they have to legally be reported as missing. So I get that, right? I get that hundreds of kids or women are reported missing every day. All I want to see is that the same effort is put in to missing Sarah over black Sarah. Do you get what I mean? It shouldn't be that just because somebody is a different ethnicity and they don't fit the status quo or they don't fit what is deemed acceptable or worthy of being alive in society, everyone should be searched for. Everyone should have that privilege of being searched for by the people that are getting paid to protect and serve us, not pick and choose who you want to look for based on their skin colour. It's absolutely disgusting that they put out the wrong CCTV image. It's absolutely disgusting, that stupid statement that I saw the Met Police release afterwards about how, we went on intel and blah 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 and there wasn't anything because of her skin colour. I don't want to see that. Why are you coming defensive? Sometimes
Melissa had asked them a question, so they preempted.
Sometimes take a step back.
Yeah.
But it's just like, sometimes take a step back and think, actually, do you know what? And what annoys, and this is why I say not all skin folk are kin folk, because they have a very senior commander that works at the Met that is a black woman.
Really?
And me personally, yes, because we've interviewed her. Me personally, I couldn't be within an institution, and maybe she is trying to make change within that. I don't know. But me personally, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier on about speaking truth within an organisation. Me personally, I could not be in an institution like that, knowing that this is happening, knowing that we have stop and search figures that are disproportionate, knowing that you have tensions amongst the black community and the police, and be doing or seem to be doing nothing about it. I personally couldn't do it, and I think the Met Police need to take a step back sometimes. Instead of being so defensive all the time, just take a step back, take a deep breath and say, well, actually,
we got it wrong.
We got it wrong. We're sorry. Let's work with community groups.
They'll
never
work
do
with
that.
Richard
Yeah.
Look at the way that whole case was handled.
This is a bit raw, because I was going to say that I lost a friend 4 years ago now, I think, who went missing, and they weren't interested. His friends, his close friends, I wasn't that close, but his close friends alerted them to the fact that he'd gone missing. He hadn't gone home, which is unusual. You know, it's not like he was, and they were just not interested. They got their own search party. They looked everywhere. They managed to obtain the CCTV, of which they were told it wasn't available, and they searched for days. And I think the police joined the search or put out notification 5 days after he'd been missing. And you know, eventually he was found in the river. But it just goes to show that what their thought process is like. You know, this is a parent. This is someone who's left behind, you know, a wife and 2 young children, and they never once showed any kind of effort. And I say effort, but actually it's their job to really look for him, because they say those vital hours, don't they? The
First 48 hours.
Is vital.
Yeah.
And I think every time
really
I got
upsetting.
a message, I kind of, he's gone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's gone.
Sorry,
You're
that's
not going to
awful.
find
Really
him.
awful.
Unfortunately, to some people, we're worthless. We're
I think that's the
we're
thing.
subhuman.
Yeah.
But there is that kind of disregard for Black lives, and I think that this is the clearest example of that the way that missing Black people, missing Black women are treated with such a callousness. Like, it is, like you say, like the fact that just that you're not seeing that same level of intensity and attention to detail. Like, how are you putting out the wrong pictures? That is how, you know, when I think about the impact that could have had in the early stages of the search, like Owami should have been found much quicker. Because the moment that coverage started to ramp up, and there were these, and her name was trending, and she was all over the national press because of pressure from people like you and your friend who did the space, and you guys and everybody who was pushing that.
It shouldn't be like that. Social
why
media
should-
shouldn't
why
have
should
to be
It's funny.
force police to go into a corner and do something, do their job.
So when I commented on it, someone said to me, "What's your problem? At least she was found." That was their first
Someone
response.
said someone's thinking similar to
I
you.
could spend an hour sitting there telling you the stuff that was sent to me, like things like, well, the police found her. No, the police did not find her. It was thanks to all the media coverage that somebody spotted her and called the police. The police did not find her. And I tell you what, there's more that's going to come out on this story. That's
Is
all I
it
can
going to
say.
come out though? Is it going to come out?
It's gonna come
It's going to come
I
out.
think what's also important, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes I see people, something might happen to someone, right? They might go missing and they may be found passed away. And sometimes I find within the Black community, they feel there's always got to be an ulterior motive or ulterior scenario as to what happened. Sometimes and I wonder if that's maybe of how kind of mental health is.
They being.
As in, sometimes within the Black community, I feel like if someone has been found dead after going missing, some people within the Black community feel that it couldn't just be that mental health played a part in that. It's that there's got to have been something else that happened. There's got to be foul play, or there's got to be a conspiracy. And I wonder if that filters into the way that the police handle cases of missing people from the community, that just automatically they think mental health, or they're depressed, they'll come back when they're ready.
That's true.
Or
Why do we
some
have
cases.
guys who suffer mental health episodes being tasered and falling into the River Thames?
Because they're Black.
But I think that's different, because that's someone standing in front of you, right? They're standing in front of the police, right? He's there in front of them. Whereas when they've gone missing, the way that they look at it is, oh, they'll come back, they're out drinking, or maybe they're just feeling depressed, they'll come back when they're better.
It's an easy out for them.
Or they don't want to be found.
Yeah, I just feel a closing thought on Owami Davies is black people need to stop being treated as if they're objects. I feel like the comment that Troy said, you're happy she's been found. I feel like if it was a white person, that would not be said. Mm-hmm. And I saw another comment, I can't remember what it was on or where it was, what site, but they were like, think how much police money, how money this is wasted. That would not be said if it was a white person. And depicting her as, you know, she might have mental health issues, but I just think there's a delay when it comes to black people who are missing. Police, there is a delay there, and it's so good that people are picking up on it. And I think, yeah, the more people who speak on it, the more people are paying attention to it as well. And hopefully it does change, but we'll just have to see with time. I think this case is also a landmark case, because people are paying attention now, people are waking up, and you know, social media is good and bad, but the power of it is that, you know, if it wasn't for someone suggesting that one of the photos of her was on like a body cam, none of us would have questioned the police. Like, you know, it only took one thought, one light bulb moment for someone to go, look at the blue reflection in that picture of her. There has been an interaction with police, you know, so I think the more people do pay attention and, you know, do not just turn a blind eye to it, hopefully it does change when it comes to reporting missing black people as well.
Let's talk about the cost of living crisis. A lot's been said about what it means for the elderly, for married couples, for families. But what does it mean for young people? Who wants to take that?
It means I feel like my daughter's going to have to go out and get a job. Because she does not know how to, she doesn't know how to turn off lights in the house. I'm sorry, she's going to have to start contributing to the energy
You're only
bills.
half joking, aren't you?
I'm not joking at all. I'm not joking at all. I'm not joking at all. I feel like, you know, a little cash in hand job, you know, paper rounds. No, it's not safe. She's black girl. It's not safe. But no, I think for the younger generation, especially those who have left home and are now living by themselves or living in house shares, etc., I think come October, they're going to be in for a massive wake-up call.
It's not manageable.
My goddaughter lives away from home and she's already saying she's moving back to her dad's. Her lease runs out in November.
She might be onto something.
She's going back to her dad's.
I think at 37 I could move back home as well. You know.
Well, my daughter was meant to move out. My daughter's just turned 30 and she said she's not going nowhere now.
Why?
Can't afford it.
Yeah.
She realises that, you know, I actually said to her, I would prefer you not to move out and pay someone's mortgage. Save up and buy your own place. But now it's like she's saying, no, I'm staying put. Because she's done the sums and realised it's ridiculous if she moves out.
It's not manageable. And I do worry for those that are not originally from London, but now work in London, whose families live outside of London, who don't have the luxury to say, I'm going to move back home, because actually they work in a different city.
Well, that was me. I think, like, I've been in London 10 years now, but I'm from Manchester, and I think if this was happening to me now, and I was still living in house shares, I'm in a very privileged position to have bought somewhere with my long-term boyfriend just last year, and we're obviously, there's the whole different set of problems for homeowners, and looking at how the mortgage rates are going to spike. That's a whole different thing. But in terms of the renting, the rental market is absolutely like on its knees in London. There are things that people are having to resort to, like in terms of the competition, the way you've got to outbid each other. People are offering up a year cash in hand. How is a normal person on a normal wage, even a good wage, supposed to be able to afford that? And like you say, what you're supposed to do, leave your job, leave your new life in London, and have to go back to Manchester.
Yeah. Have you had to make any decisions regarding sacrifices, things that you can now have to do with, that you will now have to do without because of the cost of living crisis?
I mean, I think I'm entirely at the very, very comfortable end of this crisis, and I think it's important to acknowledge that this is not a crisis that's going to hit everybody equally.
Sure.
So yeah, like I'm not going to get to go on holiday. Maybe I'd go twice, and maybe I'll go once. We'll see how this.
So you say that, and I understand why you've qualified it, but in relative terms, it hits everybody in some way.
I saw a thing saying on, I saw an infogram on social media which said people on 45k income, which is an average or above average, because I think the average income is it 38?
That's above average.
Yeah. So on an above average income of 45k will be hit by the cost of living crisis and will struggle.
Lorraine made the point that it's only when it hits the middle classes that people start to take
Yeah. But then as well, like I feel like I probably wouldn't see 45k as middle class, especially with the cost of the way everything costs, especially living in London, and if you're a parent or if you have dependents or if you rent privately. For a lot of people in a normal year, by the time they've paid their rent, their energy costs, travel, especially in London, general living costs, you're left with barely anything. And I'm talking about pre-energy prices, etc., going up. So I think for young people, I do worry about them a lot, especially those that are private renting. Obviously, we do have some young people that are in social accommodation, council housing association. But I do worry for a lot of them who are renting privately, whether it's in house shares or with partners or whatever, or by themselves, because I think they're going to be hit really hard, really, really hard, especially depending on where they're at in their careers, because we'll probably see that with a lot of businesses as well, they can't afford to give pay rises, etc. So their outgoings are going to increase, but their incoming is going to stay the same. And it was interesting that I keep seeing all these articles about people who have turned to alternative incomes by platforms such as like OnlyFans and things like that, and a lot of them are young people. It goes back to what we were saying about people creating their own platforms and content, etc. A lot of people are looking for side hustles to subsidise their income because actually they can't afford
they can't live.
No.
What's funny is that like this has been happening. This isn't like a new crisis that's just cropped up, and I think it's what you guys said about it now that it's hitting the middle classes. And I think it's young people who have been at the sharp end of this crisis. They've already been there for time. The renting and home ownership has been off limits to so many people for years already. Under the Tories, under austerity over the last 10 years, it's been, our standard of living has been slowly eroding, and our wages haven't caught up with the real-time cost of living, and that's been ongoing. It's only now that it is encroaching to the people who are on 45k, which is a very good above-average wage, by the way. Like that's something that most people can only expect to get to during the mid to senior to high parts of their career, if ever at all they would see that kind of figure. Like I think it's important to acknowledge that that's a serious amount of money. Do
you think we actually have middle class anymore though? Because if I think of some of my friends that are on like 40k and they're PAs, etc., or they work in tech, actually for a lot of them, by the time they've paid their rent and they've paid other outgoings, they don't have any money really.
I think it really is perspective though.
So I think it depends. If you've got one person that's on 45k, right, and their partner is on 90k, you've got a good income combined coming into that household. But if it's just one person in the house that's bringing in 45k, that actually is shouldering the burden of all of the bills, that's not actually... That's
the household income. I mean, I think it's...
Because you could have two people on 20k, right, which is making up 40k. And then people say, but that's a middle class income.
Ruby, do you live at home?
No, and one point I was going to raise is like some young people just don't have the luxury to even move back home in a cost of living crisis.
What do you mean by that?
They might have home issues. They might not have a home to go back to. There might be problems at home. That might be the reason they've moved.
Yeah.
You know, there's no support for people like them at all. And what's it going to take for the government to, you know, like Lorraine said, only when it hits them, only when it hits middle class people will people start to care. But yeah, it's true. This has been going on for years.
When we talk about issues that are underrepresented, do you think that's an issue that's underrepresented?
Yeah, completely. Like even today, I interviewed a Lewisham food bank, a founder, and he said, you know, food banks are now in crisis because of energy bills. We're getting no help, and if he can't make 25k by October, he's going to have to close for Christmas. He told me people are using indoor barbecues and kitchen sinks to cook food. He's hearing like some of it was so depressing what he was telling me, but you know,
and also I bet people can't afford to buy food to donate.
He said people who used to donate are now using the food banks themselves.
That's sad.
You know, there's a guy who's been in a business for 60 years, and last week he sold his flat, moved back in with his grandma. So I don't know how old he is, but he's now using food banks. So I think it's something that's underreported and underrepresented.
I think that needs to be at the forefront of this conversation. Like I think when we are talking about the cost of living crisis, we have to remember who is going to be at the worst end of it, who is actually going to be choosing between heating and eating, who's going to be at risk of falling ill or even dying because the house is so cold and they've got nowhere to go.
We've got a government that really cares about that.
No, 100% not.
You know, we think about COVID and the experience that young people would have had during that period of time, you know, near on 2 years. Our government weren't really interested in that conversation, were they? You know, they didn't really put effective measures.
Jezza would have just, you know, Labour and Jezza were in.
Uncle Darren.
Yeah.
Well, he's been talking about privatising energy companies for years and laughed
This
at.
is what I'm saying. They don't want to
And the
listen to Uncle
BBC.
Jezza. They should. The people. And you know the what? No, guys. You know the worst thing about it is, right? The last general election, when the Tories came back into power, if you look at the demographic of who got them in power. The age demographic is the same people that are going to be complaining that they can't heat their homes, the older, the pensioners.
If you don't pay, you will feel.
Right, and so it's like, you know, we need help, but you voted this government in, because if we'd gone with Jezza's been talking about privatisation for years, and free internet and making sure everyone has access to tablets and whatever, and kids, and everyone laughed at him. Then the pandemic hit, and actually, Jezza was right. And now look at us. Bring back Jezza.
Jezza for Prime Minister.
Yeah, Jezza. You know, I'll be his campaign manager. Honestly, I'll be campaign manager. Furthermore, remember I was talking about getting my daughter a job? She'll be my number 2. She'll be out there in school. Get your parents to vote for Jezza. We need him back.
And we've got to remember as well, when it comes to young people, this is going to disproportionately hit people from the ethnic communities, because a lot of them tend to be on lower wages. You know, not even the London with living wage. They're the same ones with the pandemic. They had to work because they had cleaning jobs and sort of those sort of jobs. So this is going to hit disproportionately ethnic minority groups again.
And it's going to have a knock-on effect for years as well. That it will take.
It's not just the now, is it?
It's going to have a knock-on effect for years, and it will take a lot of different groups of people a while to recover from what's going to come.
People are going to lose their jobs, people are going to lose their homes, and people are going to lose their lives because they cannot afford to heat their homes. We've done a story today about a terminally ill woman who she has to have her heating on because she's ill. She can't afford it. It's just, how in the year 2022 have we gone back so backwards?
And we're not a third world country.
I think the extension of that conversation is the one that no one likes to have, is the mental well-being of these young people as well.
It's going to be a mental health crisis. Like there's already stories going out about how doctors are now getting calls from people wanting to take their own lives because they just can't live anymore. Like
that's awful.
You know, it takes it to a whole new level. And there's, you know, food banks like the one I spoke to, they're doing the Lord's work. They don't do tinned food. You know how a lot of big food banks, this is an independent one, they have the reason their energy bills are going up because they're fridge freezers. They cater for cultural, religious diets. They do any type of food, kosher, vegan. Then you're talking dietary requirements, gluten-free if you're diabetic. But they get no government funding, no council funding because they're independent. Because they're based in Brockley, but they feed thousands of people outside of Brockley. The council won't give them the grants that other ones are.
It's disgusting.
And I feel so bad for
I
this
actually
guy.
tweeted something, and not one MP, I knew no MP would come forward. I said the fact that they can claim their energy bills on their second homes.
Yeah.
Why not pay their energy bills and donate that money to food banks? Wouldn't that be just showing a caring side, or am I just being too?
No, I
don't
agree,
know.
but also the fact that we've normalised food banks.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're sat here talking about food banks.
10 years ago, I'd never heard of a food bank.
Like,
I didn't even know
that's
one
not-
existed a
that's
couple of
not
years
normal.
ago.
And because it's a catch-22, right? Because without food banks, a lot of people wouldn't have food,
survive.
right? We've been talking about being on the breadline, being on the poverty line for years, right? Food banks, this has been going on for so long now, and might I add, for the majority of the time that the Conservative have been in power. Food banks have become normalised.
They are.
They're not normal, but because we have to have them so that people have an alternative provision for food because they can't afford to buy their own, it's become normalised. And because they've been around, we've been talking about living on the breadline. Like if you think back to all those programmes that used to come on like Channel 5 and, living on the breadline, and if you can't pay, we'll take it away. Like all of those programmes which actually highlighted the fact that we had an issue with people affording to live. Food banks have become normal, and it really, really irritates me that we say, "Oh, this is amazing that this food bank is doing this."
When I
They
see
shouldn't
Tory
exist
MPs
in the
opening up a
first.
food bank,
They shouldn't
that winds
exist
me up.
in the first place.
Yeah.
Like they should not exist in the first place. And
No,
the
I
fact
agree.
that the government have allowed us to just be okay with food banks irritates me even more because they shouldn't be. We're not. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. The fact that we have people within the UK that have to rely on food from food banks, and now upcoming warm hubs again making this normal. It's not normal.
Yeah.
It really upsets me.
Well said. Well said. Let's round off with an inspirational question about an inspirational sportswoman, Serena Williams, on the front cover of Time magazine. I love that smile there. What legacy does she leave in sport and in society?
She's changed everything, I think. I just think she's a role model in so many ways that are even beyond sport. She's been subject to so many things like racism, scrutiny, sexism, everything, and she's
Also
still
body
yeah,
shape as well.
and she's
That
still
people
here.
don't talk about enough, I think.
Yeah, she's still here, and I think she will be going down as a woman in history who has literally changed the face of tennis and being a woman in sport, being a black woman in sport as well.
In a sport that is traditionally a white
White.
middle class sport.
Tennis.
It's not a
You
space
know?
for her, and she's made it her space.
Yeah.
With such conviction and such beauty and such inspiration. I think the way she has opened up an arena for people to feel like they can step into it is just so inspiring. Like I play sport, I play netball, and to see a black woman excel in a space that she had no business excelling in. The whole system was set up for her to not excel, for her to not have access to those spaces, for her to not be the best, and not only at the beginning but throughout her career. Even now, right at the end of her career, she's still facing these attacks, this doubt, these people questioning her talent, excusing her talent, saying it's because X, Y, and Z. It's not actually down to her, to her hard work and her ethic, her work ethic. I think it's
Focusing on her behaviour as well.
oh yeah. There are so many things
When
we
you
could
look
list.
at
I
men
love
tennis
about
players.
her is that when people try and throw shade at her, she shuts them down with her talent.
Well, exactly. That's the best way to win an argument, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
You know what? Really, the question should be the Williams. What have they created in this space? And I'm talking sisters. I'm talking, mother, father. they've created a dynasty here that I don't think we've heard the last of the Williams. This is what her legacy will be, is that we haven't heard the last of them. You know, I saw her daughter watching her mum the other night, and she's going to be something, her daughter, by the way. She is going to create a space that is hers, that is unique, on the back of seeing excellence above her and excellence above her. And I think there's no end to that legacy piece, if now is when she finally steps away from tennis.
Does that legacy spill over from sport into the wider society?
Of course it
I would say it does. She has shown you don't have to stay in your lane. Get out of your lane.
Just drive carefully, yeah?
Carina?
Yeah, I think, like Troy said, I don't think it's just about her legacy herself. Her sister has done amazingly as well. When you look at the story of how they both even got to where they are and the impact that their dad had as well, I think, like Troy said, it's very clear that as a whole and as a family, they have literally made their mark in this world. I think for me, I look at her and I see the newspaper articles and I see the questions that she gets asked in pre-match and post-match interviews. I see the way that some articles are framed and the discriminatory undertones and the racist undertones, and she still comes out with grace. She still comes out with those sharp clapbacks in the interviews, and she doesn't let it visually faze her. And I think her legacy is not just one thing. It's a myriad of things where she is teaching not just young girls but women as well, that actually it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter what your body shape is, it doesn't matter whether people think that you can't do this. Sometimes it's not about clapping back, sometimes it's not about fighting back, sometimes it's going out and doing what you know that you can do and showing them, actually, I can do this, so shut your mouth.
Do you know her sister Venus, she was beaten in one of the early rounds of Wimbledon after she'd won it a couple of times, and there was this big shock and there was a big press conference and people asking her the questions, were asking her what her reaction was, and she said, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It really is. And that stuck with me. I was in the room at that time and it really did stick with me. And it just goes to show that it isn't just the winning for them that counts, is it?
But this is what I was going to say. I was saying, growing up, they were already preparing themselves for being more than just a tennis player. They knew already that whatever excellence they were going to achieve, they were going to be on a platform. So to be on that platform, you had to be all-rounded. You couldn't just be the Serena, the Venus,
But they
the
would
tennis
not
player.
have been accepted had they not been exceptional, would they?
Yeah,
And
but
I
I'm
was
saying,
about
but
to
there's
say,
a bigger piece. Yes, of course, they're exceptional. We look at their talent and we understand their talent, but they also had to navigate the media and know how to do it from a very young age because they were exposed to it. They're exposed to people that wanted every word, but actually wanted to catch them out on some of their words. They were protected. And this is why I say I don't think there's a sport individual that can now grow in the game without, let's say if we were all family, without all of us playing our part in it. And that's the legacy that will be created, because there'll be a family that will be recognised right from top to bottom. But they knew that they had to create the excellence in everything that they were doing. And the fact that they are successful business women as well. So let's just park tennis for a minute. They're successful business women as well. You know, to do that, to navigate that circle whilst also being excellent at your trade is just, no one can deny where they are and how they've got to where they are. There'll still be people trying to knock them down and knock Serena down. But like I said, the interview I heard the other night, I'm not even sure she's finished yet.
No.
You know, but it was all set up for almost as if like tonight's the night, you're going to lose and we've created all of this for you, and then she goes and wins. And so maybe they're going to create it again.
Are you all as women inspired by her?
Wildly. Like,
Absolutely.
so much. I think, to see, I think again, like you touched upon this in terms of her, the way she has been shamed for her body, and to have a physical body as a black woman who plays sport, I think is something that's is difficult to navigate, and there will always be judgments about it. There will always be things that, you know, because not only are you you have to look a certain way, as you have certain expectations on yourself as a woman generally. There's a different level to it when you're a black woman, and also when you have an athletic physique. And I think that was something that I always related with Serena about my own concerns about being too muscular or appearing, too masculine, as she was often told that she was. So I think to see her just exist in her body with such joy, and to wear the outfits that she wore, and to just be so proud of that, I think it really showed me personally that it's okay to strength train and to get my body strong and to look that way and to try and excel in that space. So that's something that I really, on a personal level, have taken away from watching Serena, and has given me a lot of joy over the years to see her.
Again, with me, it was the fact that every time somebody tried to come at her, she just killed them. She just killed them with her talent. And
Reminds me of someone. It reminds me of someone.
and her talent just spoke volumes, and you can't argue with that. Nobody can argue with her. They can't call her a cheat. They can't do anything. And I like that about her.
Talent spoke volumes around the table here as well. Big thanks to Natalie Morris, Lorraine King, Carina White, Ruby Gregory, and Troy Townsend. The Conversation Unscripted is back next month. We'll have another stellar table for you. Tune in, watch us then. See you then.